into another edition of the Cubs REKAP Podcast, a presentation of our REKAP YouTube channel and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcast. A week to go in the season. My guy, Gordon Wittenmeyer, my partner. I'm David Kaplan. All right, Gordon, let's get into Craig Counsell.
Oh, wait. I want to ask you something first, Cap.
Bruce Smiley, yes.
Hey, what are your big vacation plans for October with no baseball to watch on TV, my man?
Jamaica.
You doing what?
I'm going to Jamaica. It's my wife's big birthday.
That's a good deal. So it's a good thing. Yeah. You don't have to get distracted by baseball playoffs or the Bears being any good.
Yeah, I can't yell at you. Still alive, Gordon.
Still alive. And I can't yell. I can no longer my ass.
They're done. All right. So, I like Craig Counsell. I think he's a good baseball man, but his lack of fire at times, and I'm sure he has it internally. You don't succeed to the level he has if you don't have an internal fire.
You don't play that many years in the big leagues.
Yeah, I mean, he was a hell of a good player, solid
championship
World Series winner. He's won a ton of games as a manager. There were times, though, that bad ball and strike calls or bad call, and I'm not – you could bark from the dugout, or at times when your team looks lifeless, you can come out of the dugout, get your ass tossed out, and see, like Lou Piniella told me once, sometimes you just got to take one for the team and try and fire the guys up. And I didn't see that. Well, last week, he's meeting with the Chicago media, as the manager does before every game and after every game. And before one of the games last week, he said, we got to start trying to build at minimum 90-win teams around here so that you're safely in the tournament, and then you go from there. And you could tell.
Isn't that what Theo told us? That's what Theo told us, too.
Correct.
That was the idea. 90 wins.
Get to 90, and then you'll have your years where injury and I don't know. And you're going to have your year where everything falls in place, and you might win a World Series. And they did that. And then Jamison Taillon spoke to the media after one of his starts. And he said, God, go back to 2016, 17, and that run. Teams were scared to death to come into Wrigley back then. He said, now they love coming into Chicago, and we got to get back to where they're scared to come in here. And then Drew Smiley said, everyone in baseball wants to be a Cub. They love it.
Yeah, put Taillon's comments in context. He was asked if they need to go out and get stars.
Correct.
And this is the Chicago freaking Cubs. Yes, they should absolutely go get stars. And not go halfway. And that's the shit that Counsell's talking about. It took, he gave it all season. He gave it all season until they got eliminated again. They're going to wind up, they go get the quote, best manager in the game, spend more money on him than any manager in history. And you know what they're going to do? About the same effing thing they did last year. If they go 3-3 these last 6 games, which is
they tied David Ross,
then they're exactly the same record, and they're further away from the playoffs.
Correct.
That tells you that it wasn't the manager, probably, because they ran out essentially the same team. In fact, we talked about this, I compared the Imanaga signing to the Stroman departure. Well, they got way more out of Imanaga than they ever got out of Stroman. Taillon had a better year than he had last year. And you still are going to wind up the same friggin' team with the best manager in the game. Counsell's right. It's because they've gone halfway on that roster the last couple of years. That's why.
Agreed. And I find it, curious that you'll go out, you make a solid trade for Michael Busch. Good trade. Got no issue with that trade. And if Jackson Ferris becomes a good player down the road, so be it. You got
that was a trade of opportunity and a good one. I'll give him credit. Sure. But that wasn't because you tried to go out and get the best first baseman you could find.
No, you saw an opportunity and you pounced.
And you rolled the dice.
And it worked.
And it turned out well.
Imanaga's 14-3, pitching his tail off.
15-3.
15-3 now. He just had a win. You're in a good place there. You've brought in Itzhak Paredes. We'll see how he does next year.
He's not going to do any worse than the last guy at third base.
That's true. He's better than that. Pete Crow Armstrong has ascended now, and he looks really good. And that was a hell of a
really interested to see. Next year's huge for him.
But that all said, take all those good things, and I give Jed all the credit in the world for those good things, to go through 2 straight seasons with the bullpen that he constructed and not having a legitimate closer there is unconscionable, Gordon.
Yeah, but we've talked about that before. I don't know that it necessarily has to be the closer, the consummate closer. It's got to be a bullpen that can provide any of 3 guys that can give you a 9th inning when you need it, that can close down the last 3 or 4 innings. That's where we are nowadays. You're lucky to get 6 innings out of a starter. That's what their staff is built for 6 innings a start. A very good starting staff is built for 6 innings a start. You got to get those 3 somewhere else, and those are oftentimes high leverage innings. To me, it doesn't matter that look at Craig Kimbrell. I mean, a guy that at one point looked like a Hall of Fame closer. Even when he was with the Cubs, he looked like he was on a Hall of Fame track. Who knows now? He just got DFA'd. So there aren't that many closers. I don't think they needed to go out and get the closer. They just needed to not whiff for the 2nd year in a row on every damn reliever that they thought they were putting in that pen.
Especially at the back end. Like
you actually nowadays, you almost need, like, there's no soft middle of a bullpen anymore. You need guys, like almost every guy has to be at some level a leverage guy. Otherwise, you can't use him. And that's why you see all these shuttles too. These guys that get optioned, these AAA option shuttles.
Okay, so let's talk about the comments from the manager first and foremost. 90 wins should be what we're building for every year, and then we go from there.
Especially when you have a payroll that's always when you think you have a good team, should always be at least flirting with the luxury tax threshold.
Correct.
You're the Chicago Cubs.
Correct. So the Cubs reportedly, again, I haven't spoken to Jed, and he would never answer this question anyway, which is fine. They're not going to be in on Juan Soto.
Of course not. You knew that.
Yeah, because he's too expensive. Now, would they get him? I think he's staying with the Yankees personally. But if he moves, there's no reason then that you're not involved. None. If he stays with the Yankees, he's had a great year. I get it. He'd always grown up liking the Yankees. But if you tell me we wake up and, oh, my God, he's a Dodger, a Ranger, then it tells me you could have gotten him if you weren't cheap.
If he's a Ranger, it definitely tells you that.
Right. So when you hear Craig Counsell say that, in your opinion, because I believe it is, it's a direct shot at his bosses.
No question. And the only question in there is it more of a shot at Jed or more of a shot at Tom? Because I think he feels, and he said this, if it wasn't in that same, it was either with the Athletic. He talked about, or maybe it was with Nightingale, right? He talked about the Brewers and the big gap between them and the Brewers that they have to make up, and how they've got more resources than the Brewers, but the Brewers get more out of what they do. So he's basically saying we don't have the processes that the Brewers do in scouting and player development to get what they do out of their guys. And we're not doing enough on the things we can control with our resources, like some of the other big market teams. I think that's what I read in his comments. That's the way I see it. And by the way, that's what I've said myself for years. I think that's an accurate view of things with that club. And I think that's why, as we've talked about, now that they've been eliminated again, now that they're the same damn team they were a year ago, despite going and getting the most expensive manager in the history of the game, somebody should be looking long and hard at Jed Hoyer's job security.
Well, he's not going to get an extension. That's what I have confirmed. He's got 1 year left. So how do you approach the offseason if you're Jed? Because I remember Ryan Pace being in the last year or next to last year, and you better win this year or you're going to get fired by the Bears, which he ended up getting fired by the Bears. but that's a desperate man, goes out and trades picks to get Justin Fields and signs a couple veterans, and all of a sudden it doesn't work well enough and he's out. What would you do if you were Jed Hoyer, knowing you're being told by your bosses, hey, man, we're not going to be giving you the money to go get Juan Soto? That's not a Jed problem. That's an organizational problem. So how do you handle it if you're sitting in Jed's seat? You got Owen Casey ready to come up, Matt Shaw ready to come up, Triantos ready to come up, Cam Smith not far away, Cade Horton not far away. How do you handle it?
Well, the first thing I do is what's that?
It's a tough question.
I get on the same page with my manager if I'm not already there. If those comments didn't catch me off guard, then I'm probably already on the same page with him. But I need to get with him and say, look, you've got a lay of the land now. You've been a year here. You see what I'm up against. You see what we're up against. Tell me within these parameters what you think we ought to go do. What do you need? And if he comes back in a Taillon tone and starts talking about, we're the Chicago freaking Cubs, we need to go out and get Juan Soto, or we need to go out and get this other legitimate starting pitcher who's going to cost us, let's say, at least 3 years, $50 million. We need to go do that. If we don't, then it's dereliction of duty as a big market organization. And so we need to go to Tom with that. And then if that's what his answer is, I make another run at Tom 2-on-1. I take Counsell in there with me and I say, look, man, we got the best manager in the game right here. He knows exactly what our organization is top to bottom now. And he knows this division better than anybody else managing in it right now. So let's listen to him and go out and get what we need. And by the way, when I was talking about that pitching, like he wants some pitching depth, even with that rotation. I tell you, the guy to go get is another Boris guy. Go get Nick Martinez. Nick Martinez is one of the hottest starters in baseball right now. And it's first time in 3 years back in the big leagues from Asia that he's gotten a chance to start every day for an extended period. And he's this year's Seth Lugo. He's probably going to get in the neighborhood. Seth Lugo got 3-45-ish. I think Martinez has put himself in a position to get 3-50. That's the kind of guy to go get. And he embraces the role of also being a guy that can give you both relief innings too. He can do a number of roles for you. He's one of the best dudes in the clubhouse I've ever been around. And he's a team first guy. This guy could make a difference for a team like the Cubs, who already have so many other pieces in place.
So no Corbin Burns.
That ain't happening. No.
Completely agree.
No. But Nick Martinez would be a quiet move to a lot of people. That would be, they'd look up at about June 1st or 2nd and say, holy crap, this guy is the reason we're in first place right now.
Right. Because he gives you some depth there. And I think Cade Horton, if he's healthy, should be part of this team next year. So who would you move, or who do you think Counsell, better question, who do you think Craig Counsell would move off the existing roster who's under contract that the Cubs control? Would you trade Nico Hoerner with his 6 whatever OPS?
There you go. All Nico
Hoerner in salary there.
In the however many weeks it's been that you've been banging this drum to get rid of Nico Hoerner, all he's done
I'm not banging the drum. I'm simply asking you who you could trade. I like Nico Hoerner, and I think he's a gutty, tough kid. I'm just trying to look and go, well, they're not going to save money, and they're not going to trade Michael Busch. Not that I think they could or should.
I don't think you're in a position to do that, Cap. I think that's a non-starter question because, like, you bring up Nico, he does have value, but the reason he has value is the same reason you want to keep him. You don't want to gut the middle infield that might be, on their healthy days, they're as good as anybody else in baseball in that middle infield. You don't want to gut that. All you have to do is look up the road at Milwaukee to see what fielding does for your run prevention when you have, and they have, Milwaukee has good pitching. They don't have great pitching. They got good pitching, but their fielding is outstanding. So it makes them a contender. It makes them a division winner and a playoff team, and maybe a team that could win a series or two in the postseason. So you don't gut that. You keep that, and then when you start to look around, there's nowhere to go. You're keeping Bush. You're keeping Swanson. You're rolling the dice with Paredes going forward. You got him now. You're not moving any of the friggin' outfielders. PCA is the most intriguing hitter you got coming back next year. So I think you go in and you try to double down on your starting pitching, which is already on paper as good, at least as anybody in the division going in, maybe this side of Cincinnati, and can compete. They can compete next year. You double down on that, get some more depth, and make sure your bullpen's covered. If an opportunity comes up, get it. But
okay, so I'm looking at the contract for Nico. His new contract starts with this season we're in right now. Age 27, he's making $11.5. He makes $11.5 next year. He makes $12 million the next year. So if you're not moving Nico, and again, let me be clear, I like Nico Hoerner, but you're not going to trade the first baseman. He makes league minimum. You're not going to trade Amaya. He makes league minimum. You're not getting any maniac in baseball to take Dansby Swanson's contract. You just acquired Isaac Paredes, and he doesn't make a ton of money. You're not trading Ian Happ unless he waives his no-trade clause, and I don't think he will. His wife is from the Chicago area. You make no money with PCA, and you're not trading him. And Seiya Suzuki has a no-trade clause. So all of a sudden now, you're hamstrung on trying to tweak your lineup, cut payroll in one area to add in another area.
Is that what you're doing? Is that what you're trying to cut payroll?
No. I'm trying to move money from one position so I can add it somewhere else. And on top of the whole kit and caboodle here, Gordon, if you keep Nico, what happens to your top two position player prospects? Matt Shaw, James Triantos, Cam Smith's coming.
I don't give a damn what happens to them, Cap, because it's
the
Chicago.
Come up.
So what? They're prospects. If they're that friggin' good, they'll force their way up. There's a DH in the National League right now. There's places to play. There's roster spots that are bench spots. If these guys force their way up and might have a week to play or 2 weeks to play because of an injury, they will find opportunities if they're good enough and make their own opportunities. I don't worry about that. The minute I start worrying about that, I'm no longer playing for the playoffs. I'm no longer playing to win and playing like a big market team. And Nico Hoerner leads your team in hits. And you may not think that's a big friggin' deal, but Luis Arias is showing you in San Diego right now the value of having contact hitters that can put the ball in play and get you a base hit. He's one of your better hitters on the team. He walks enough. He doesn't strike out a lot. And he's got like a 335, 345 on base. That's a valuable player when you're getting Gold Glove middle infield defense out of him. So if he's got anything close, if he's around a 700 OPS, he's a valuable guy, especially at that salary that you pointed out. That's not a high salary for that guy. And so you're not going to upgrade by moving him to fix another area. You're going to create another hole to fill and a big one. So the thing is to start sacking up and acting like a big market team. Jameson Taillon is right. If you look around the league at the teams that are threats year in and year out these last few years, look at what the Phillies did a few years ago when they signed Harper, and then they doubled down. They got Real Muto and Zach Wheeler, and they extended Nola. They added Schwarber when he became available. Start Castellanos, different type of hitter, but they got guys, all-star hitters, all-star starters. They got stars. And what did it do? And that's Dave Dombrowski's blueprint, right? And what did they do? They made the playoffs every year. They made the World Series. They're threats every year. What did the Dodgers do? Dodgers ramped up. They got Mookie Betts a couple of years ago. Then they got Shohei for $700 million. You can't touch that three-headed monster at the top of their lineup unless you go to New York and look at the middle of their order with Judge and Soto because they went and got Soto. They doubled down
and
on
Giancarlo Stanton, by the way, who they took that money on.
Right. And he was already there by the time you did that. But these superstars are why these are the best teams in baseball and why they're going to be awfully hard to knock off come October, because superstars, when it comes to hitting, those are the guys that swing playoff series and then pitching and defense. Teams can find ways to cobble together pitching and defense if you spend enough time and resources on that, run prevention. But being able to hit in the playoffs is harder to do than it ever has been. And those superstar lineups are why those are the favorites. The Cubs should be one of those teams. That's what Taillon's saying. That's what I've said for 10 years. You've even sometimes, it seems like, agreed with me on that. So sack up and do it. Act like the billionaires you are and do it.
I couldn't agree more, but they won't.
Okay.
I'm trying to think like an executive here that gets his hands tied.
Well, then you're screwed. Because I tell you what, Theo Epstein went in there and he was hamstrung too. Now, I won't bore you with all the details. We've talked about this forever, but because of the debt they were under at the time, they
were spending covenants.
And their spending was restricted by the banks. So they could only do so much at the time. So they stripped everything down, and then they got good faster than they expected. So what Theo did was he got creative with the finances, created a little baseball operations piggy bank, carried over some money, and then convinced Tom, I'm going to do 2 off seasons in one. But don't worry about the covenants. Don't worry about being off kilter with the revenues versus the spending, because that's what the covenants are about. You wind up in penalty phases if you're not underneath the revenues, because we'll make you that money. I guarantee you we'll make you that money going forward, because this team, it's going to be what we need for this team.
Right.
And it worked because Theo's cutthroat, competitive. He doesn't go halfway. Jed's a great guy. He's a perfect 2 to Theo. They were a terrific team. Jed's a different guy than Theo was when it comes to this stuff. He's not. He doesn't take the same ingenious approach. He's much more risk averse and careful on some things. It's probably served him well in his career, but right now he's at a spotlighted marquee position, and you got to find a way for that team to play with the superstars. You have to.
I'm with you. I don't disagree. You're the Chicago Cubs. You got an ATM machine at the corner of Clark and Addison. I mean, it is what it is. Just don't believe they're going to do that. They might add a player here or
then somebody here. Then the fans need to fire the owner. Then that's how the owner gets fired. The fans fire him. They don't pay for shit. They don't show up.
I truly believe, Gordon, that if the right guy came along and said, yeah, who is it? Yeah, it's pick the guy, Aaron Judge. I know he's under contract. Hey, I want to be a Cub. It's the only place I want to sign. That they would be the ones that would go, we can't afford you. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. More or less, I mean, he didn't come knocking on their door, but that was no go. You were all over the Aaron Judge idea when he was a free agent. That was a non-starter for the
correct. But Bryce Harper wanted to be a Cub. He named his effing dog Wrigley, and guess what? Can't do it.
Can't do it. And that was after a year of saying we're keeping our powder dry. Most teams in baseball are, because of that great free agent class coming up.
Correct.
Machado's free agent class was the same free agent class. Both got $300 million. Guess which team wasn't bidding on either one of them?
The Cubs.
And the White Sox were in on Machado.
And Bryce Harper. They entertained him there. That's
right. And the Cubs weren't. So
sad. I wanted your thoughts on what Craig Counsell, Taillon, Smiley said everyone in baseball wants to be a Cub. He goes, talk to guys. They all want to play here.
Yeah, in fact, it used to be even more so. But I've talked to guys that have played with the Cubs, play with other teams now, and they love it. They've loved the experience because of that environment at the ballpark. The fans come out. The fans support the team in a way that a lot of places don't.
And to Jed and Theo's credit, now Jed and the Ricketts family, they treat their players very, very well. Everything is first class around there. So
you mean they don't have the little two-seater prop plane that the White Sox use?
No, the White Sox prop plane from the movie Major League where they're taping up the prop. Yes. My God. All right, Gordon, we'll reconvene. When are you back in town next?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I'm driving back up tomorrow, and we finish the season. The Reds finish the season managerless against the juggernaut Cubs in a battle for, I don't know, mediocrity.
Yeah, I don't understand why you had to fire David Bell with a week to go. Just let him finish the season, then fire him.
Yeah, they said they just decided that in the last couple of days, and they figured, well, why wait till the end of the season if we can get a head start on the process? And now, they're putting together a list as we speak and doing some due diligence already on guys. What if David Ross gets that job?
Oh, wow. Skip Schumacher, David Ross, Joe Girardi. It'd be couple guys with Cubs ties.
How about, and this isn't a Cubs tie, but what if Tito Francona says he's healthy enough and wants to come out of retirement? Worked for Bruce Bochy.
It did. That'd be interesting, man. All right, Gordon, have a great day. Drive safe, okay?
All right, man. I'll see you in a few days.
Yeah, we'll get back together and we'll do the podcast together so we can scream at each other face to face. That is my guy. That's Gordon Wittenmeyer. I'm David Kaplan. This is the latest edition of the Cubs REKAP Podcast, a presentation of our REKAP YouTube channel and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcast. For Gordon, for our great crew, I'm Cap. Fly the W. Take that.